Okay, we are going to go over our PowerPoint on food safety here. Okay, so typically food-borne illnesses are caused by pathogens that are delivered by fecal to oral transmission. That's really the most common way. It's not the only way, but it is the most common way, right? So basically, it means there's poop in the food. Okay, either it can be human feces, it can be animal feces, but it's basically poop in the food. Sounds really gross, but it's true. Proper food handling and food prep can really solve this problem most of the time. So we've essentially got several different types of pathogens, and those could be viruses, bacteria, and parasites. Okay, so basically understand that viruses are not living things, but they're sort of like living things. They have their own DNA, and that they can make you really sick. You can't get rid of them with antibiotics. And familiarize yourself just a little bit with the ones, and there's a chart in your text on viruses, so just cover that a little bit. Bacteria, when we cover bacteria, we'll talk about we got E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter jejuni, and Clostridium botulinum. So with a lot of these, it's not necessarily the bacteria itself, but it's the toxins that they create as they grow that really get you. Okay. Examples of parasites. So these are living organisms that actually live inside your body if you ingest them. Are Cryptosporidium, Cyclospora, Giardia, and Trichinella. And the most common one that you might find in the U.S. would be the trichinella, right? And those are these little worms that you find in pork. So as long as you cook it well, and we'll get to that, these aren't really a problem. Okay, so some people are going to be at higher risk than others for foodborne illnesses, and those are primarily going to be the very old, the very young, as well as anyone with a compromised immune system. If someone has HIV, or they're undergoing chemotherapy, or they're on they have any other situation that compromises their immune system, they're going to be at much higher risk of getting this foodborne illnesses. Basically, they're going to get stuff that a healthy person could just be able to fight off. Okay, so how do we go about preventing foodborne illnesses? Well, the easiest way is just clean your hands and clean your food, right? Wash your hands. You see that bathroom signs in restaurants and stuff like that about the employees cleaning their hands. Clean your food well, as well as guard against cross-contamination. So that includes cleaning knives, cleaning boards. If you've got a wood cutting board, you've got to clean it with bleach to make sure, because it's porous and it soaks up all the germs and stuff very easily. 10% bleach solution is a great way to kill all that stuff, as well as cook things thoroughly and refrigerate them properly. Okay, so basically, when we cook things, ideally, if we cook them up to 160 degrees, we're going to kill everything and it'll be fine, right? The other thing we got to do is refrigerate them properly, so below 40 degrees. And typically the danger zone of where bacteria can really grow, and you'll see this on page 500 to 501, is between 40 and 140 degrees, right? If you're in that range, it's warm enough for bacteria to grow. In fact, right around body temperature, right around 99, 98, 100 degrees, that's the worst temperature for your food to be at, because things just really grow in that temperature. But if it's cooked, it's above 160, or if you get it in the fridge below 40, that's where the food is really going to be safe. So what are other ways we can go about preserving our food when it's not being cooked or necessarily refrigerated? Well, think of things that people used to use in the good old days, right? Pickling, salting, drying, like beef jerky. You can heat it and freeze it like we commonly do now. You can also pasteurize it, which is kind of a flash heating. They do this to milk and now orange juice quite frequently. Another way to do it is irradiation. So it's a low level of radiation that kills bacteria and things mostly on the surface of foods, and this is frequently done with chicken, right? You can also can food, which involves heating it first and then canning it in a sterile environment. Okay, so you can also look into food additives. We use several of those to make our food last longer. They're generally regarded as safe. So the thing about food additives is, if it's generally regarded as safe, the FDA has basically said that we can put these in our foods and we can eat them in small amounts and they're not going to hurt us, right? And so some people may decide to try and avoid these things, but it all is a trade-off, basically. We want our food to taste good, and we want it to last longer, so we're going to put some additives in there. MSG is another additive that's frequently added to foods, and some people, a small percentage of the population, has a sensitivity to MSG, monosodium glutamate, and they need to avoid it. MSG itself doesn't really have flavor. What it does is it's supposed to bring out the other flavors. Another example of additives that are generally regarded as safe are sulfites. So sulfites help preserve meats and things like that. Okay, so when we have another way to get sick from food, basically, other than the poop in the food, is basically toxins. So we get from fish and marine toxins, we get bioaccumulation. You hear about this a lot with mercury and about not eating too much fish. Because you can get too much mercury. Well, here's what happens: is the little small little tiny bacteria and things like that. They get a hold of this. They get a hold of this mercury, right? They don't get rid of it. But animals are not good at getting rid of mercury, so they get it. Then the little tiny animals get it. Then a small fish eats it. Then a bigger fish eats that, and a bigger fish eats that, and a bigger fish eats that, and then you eat the big fish. And all along the way, that mercury and the other heavy metals are accumulating, right? So they accumulate, and nobody excretes them. And so by the time you get to the big fish and then there's a risk of building up large amounts of that. Another way you can get toxins from seafood is fish eating microorganisms that cause what we call a red tide. So these are basically certain times of year. I believe it's spring and summer. These bacterial blooms will grow in certain parts of the ocean, and they basically have a toxin in them. And you can't eat oysters and things like that during certain times of the year. Okay. So then we can talk about chemicals that are intentionally put into the food supply. So when we get to that, we've got things like growth hormone and antibiotics, herbicides, antimicrobials, fungicides. Okay, so what all these things do is they help with abundant crop productions, right? They help increase crop yields. If we didn't have these things, we wouldn't be able to have the excellent diets that we enjoy today. So, to limit your intake of this stuff, the simplest thing you can do is wash your food, wash your fruits and vegetables, right? And that's pretty much it. But what I really want you to understand is that these things are not put in the food supply to, due to nefarious purposes of giant corporations. What they're doing is they're increasing the food supply, keeping it inexpensive, and allowing us to have the high level availability of different foods that we have today. Okay, so this is, in a sense, being highly worried about these things is a rich country's problem, right? If you're truly poor, and you can't afford food, you want that food to be cheap, and you're willing to accept that low risk that some herbicide over there, over decades or more, may cause some sort of small problems. So the thing is, all these technologies, they've literally saved millions of lives. They've saved more lives from starvation than really anything else. Okay, so that's it for food safety. You remember that you are still responsible for reading the chapter. Make sure you read all of that, and you're responsible for everything in there as well. Thanks.